Hello, scholars and alumni, and welcome to our fourth Meet the Immigrant Entrepreneurs event, a speaker series in partnership with Immigrants Rising. My name is Nicole Wesley, Senior Program Manager of Career Supports at TheDream.Us. Before we begin, I want to share a few announcements. First of all, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat, tell us where you're coming from, your major, what school you're attending. Also, feel free to include your LinkedIn URL. This is a great time for you to connect with other scholars and alumni across the country. If you do drop your LinkedIn URL, please make sure to include the HTTP in front of it so it's clickable in the chat. For today's event, please use the Q&A feature to ask questions for our panelists. Use the chat feature for all other communication. Note that all sessions will be recorded and posted on the TheDream.Us YouTube channel. And lastly, please know that all information provided during today's session is for educational purposes only. Information shared is not legal advice. I want to also briefly mention our ITIN website, as ITINs can be a powerful tool for those who are not eligible for a Social Security number. An ITIN is an individual taxpayer identification number that is issued by the IRS. ITINs can be used to file and pay taxes, open a bank account, apply for an EIN, and pursue entrepreneurial career opportunities such as freelancing, independent contracting, and starting a business. For more information on ITINs, check out our ITIN webpage where you can access these helpful handouts and resources, as well as our ITIN YouTube playlist. You can also find a link to Immigrants Rising's ITIN guide at the bottom of our ITIN webpage. As a reminder, our final Meet the Immigrant Entrepreneur session is this Friday with a focus on entrepreneurship in science and technology. The session will last 90 minutes and will start at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Please make sure to adjust for your own time zone. Also know that this session has its own separate Zoom link, so make sure that you are clicking on the correct Zoom link prior to the start of our session. And now we'll begin today's session with a focus on entrepreneurship in health and medicine. I'll turn it over to our moderator from Immigrants Rising, Rocio.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It is so great to be here once again. This is our fourth Meet the Immigrant Entrepreneur series, and we're super excited to now focus on the theme of health and medicine. And for those of you who are new to our Meet the Entrepreneur series, my name is Rocio Preciado, and I'm the Director of Mental Health and Career Services at Immigrants Rising. And I've been at Immigrants Rising for around 10 years. And I have shared in previous sessions that I was formerly undocumented. I was born in Guadalajara, Mexico, and I came to the US at the age of 9. I majored in psychology and feminist studies. And when I graduated from UC Santa Cruz, one of the big questions that I had was, how am I going to utilize my degree knowing that I do not have work authorization? And the question of, was it worth it? Was going to college worth it? And were people right when they said, what's the point of working so hard if you might not be able to work? And I am here to tell you that there were so many different opportunities that opened up for me when I graduated from UC Santa Cruz. And one of those things that I had to do was work at the flea market, volunteer, to be able to grow in my skills and expand my network, to be able to eventually have an opportunity as an independent contractor with a nonprofit organization, Immigrants Rising, and within a college and university. And what that one question of, was it worth it, was answered for me. And I can tell you that every effort that you're putting into today, into growing, leveraging your skills, and thinking about your careers, dependent of the career that you're in, is worth it and will be worth it. And I'm very excited because we have an amazing group of panelists that will speak to that and are a testament that it is possible and that there are so many things that you will go through, so many different hurdles that will, at the end of the day, be worth it. And so with us today, we have 3 incredible panelists who will be able to connect and really relate to maybe different parts of your story. And one of our first panelists that we have today is Mayra Jimenez. And Mayra Jimenez is the owner of Contigo Counseling Incorporated. And Mayra Jimenez is a formerly undocumented licensed marriage and family therapist living in Southern California. She has worked in the nonprofit mental health sector for over 10 years in a variety of roles ranging from administrative coordination to clinical work and supervision. She utilizes her lived experience to guide the way she engages clients in therapy. Mayra's commitment to providing mental health services that are equitable, accessible, and affordable led to the creation of her business, Contigo Counseling Incorporated, which is focused on serving the undocumented community. Thank you, Mayra, so much for being here. We also have Lily Campos. Lily was born in Mexico City and crossed the border to the US at the age of 7 with her family. She was undocumented for 22 years until obtaining LPR status through the U visa in 2016. Liliana is a decolonial healer trained in clinical psychology at the University of California, San Francisco, where she provides mental health support to developing healthcare providers, scientists, physicians, and social justice scientists, and facilitates support spaces for identified BIPOC students that center racial healing and ancestral medicine practices. She has taught courses in culture and mental health and co-founded the Mental Health Connector program at Immigrants Rising. Liliana's clinical and research interests are at the intersection of social justice, community organizing, and activism, trying to understand the mental health effects of anti-immigration policy and racism on immigrant, undocumented, and refugee communities from a decolonial and liberation psychology perspective. Some of her research has focused on examining the mental health outcomes of various types of fear among students who have an undocumented legal status. Liliana completed her doctoral internship at UC Davis, CAPS, AB 540 undocumented student track, and was a former member of the California Psychology Association Immigrant Task Force. Liliana received the 2020 MedMD Educator Health Hero Award for her work over the last 30 years on raising awareness about the
30. Well, that's a lot. Something like that, yes.
It's a lot that our panelists have, and so we're very honored to be able to highlight all of that. We also have Mayra Veronica Barragan O'Brien. Is a formerly undocumented human. She's a California marriage and family therapist that is passionate about working with immigrants, Black, Indigenous, people of color, neurodivergent, and LGBT+ communities. She's the founder of Undocumented Health, a nonprofit organization created to destigmatize mental health in the immigrant community, and the co-founder of Undocu-Chisme, a podcast created to highlight, uplift, and archive the stories of amazing humans within our communities. During her free time, you'll find her at a BIPOC-owned coffee shop, reading and living her best señora life. Welcome, Mayra. Welcome, all of you. And I am super excited because over the last 17 years, Immigrants Rising has been focusing a lot on entrepreneurship. And one of the things that we've been doing at Immigrants Rising is being able to not just think about folks who have access to certain programs, but also thinking about how can we begin to pave the way for those who are often left out of certain resources, of certain programs, and even certain conversations. And so you all, as I mentioned earlier, have been lived testaments of walking through that journey of entrepreneurship. And as an organization, we've talked about it, and we have been doing this work for 17 years. But so have each of you walked that journey of having to become an entrepreneur and really taking on some of those entrepreneurial journeys and experiences. And so my question for you all is, what was your very first encounter to entrepreneurship? And oftentimes there's folks who might not think of themselves as entrepreneurs, or never thought that they had like an entrepreneurial spirit. But if you can share, what was your first encounter to entrepreneurship, and a little bit more about your story and your business's story? And we can go ahead and start off with Mayra Jimenez.
Thank you, Rocio. So I think my first experience with entrepreneurship, if I think about it, is like when I was young, right? Because I think we have to figure out how to survive and how to contribute. I think like learning from my family, just, you know, my mom's a great cook, so like whatever she could make and whatever she could sell. And I think even in college, I think I was in college before DACA. I was in college when none of that existed. So I think for me, it was like finding things that I could do. I had odd jobs where I would just tell my friends, if you need somebody to like transcribe your research, I'm here, I'll do it. I used to do a lot of studies that I would participate in because I would get paid. But I never really considered myself an entrepreneur until now. Like, I think even having this invite from Rocio, I'm like, what am I going to offer? Like, I don't know. So now I finally feel like I am a business owner, and like, what does that mean to me? What does that look like? I think I'm still learning, so I'm very new in this experience of being in a business.
Thank you, Mayra. Thank you for sharing. And then we'll have Lily.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. So wonderful to be here with you all. I'm super sad that I can't see your faces. So bear with me as I try to connect with you all. Yeah, I can think of the first time for me was I too also went to college before DACA, 2000-ish, around that time. So, you know, the climate was different and not so different, right? In a lot of different ways. But upon graduating from college, from my undergrad, I received an opportunity to teach health in the science department at a high school. And the way that it was, and at the time I had no idea, right? I was like, oh, I don't know, I'm not going to be able to do it, right? You have to get background check, all that stuff. And it was with a nonprofit organization, actually. So I got hired as an employee first. And then, of course, you know, 6 months later, my employer gets back, you know, your social is not good. So at that point, I had established a pretty trusting relationship with my employer, but I was just like, you know what? I'm going to just tell her and see what happens, right? So I engaged with her. This is what, 2008. In a conversation around like, hey, this is my status. I really want to work here. I can volunteer, or we can maybe kind of think about an under the table kind of situation. You know, I'm kind of selling myself, right? And selling my skills at that point. And also scared that, you know, she's going to either kick me out of the office or call ICE. So holding both of those experiences at the same time. And we were able to figure out that actually I could get hired as an independent contractor. So at that time, she hired me as an independent contractor, and I was able to teach health in the science department at a high school for 4 years. So I did that. And I think that was the introduction to really kind of thinking about, how do I now continue to identify skills and market myself, right? And I know we're using like all these words like entrepreneurship, market, profit, all that, right? These are all white colonial words, right, that we use that are very business-like. So I always try to remember that I'm using that language to navigate a system. So I share that because I think it's really important for us to also, yes, think about our skills and our talents, but also to continue, right, to challenge these systems in the ways that we're taught to be and learn and think of profit as well.
Thank you, Lily. Myra.
My story is similar. I can relate to both Mayra and Liliana in different senses. So I also didn't have the words to label myself as an entrepreneur or as a business person or anything like that. But I did realize in the past 3 years that we've carried this for generations and generations. Like our parents, our grandparents found different ways to generate money, generate a way of living without working for somebody. My dad, for example, he used to buy cars and he used to resell them, and there's that profit. My mom would always buy socks or underwear, in the bulk, and then resell those. So they were very brave. And again, after the years, I understood that I got a lot of those skills from them. And I'm also formerly undocumented, as Rocio mentioned. I never qualified for DACA because in 2010, I was feeling so defeated. I felt like I had no reason for me to stay here in this country when I couldn't work, I couldn't go to school. AB 540 was a thing, which is you were able to pay in-state tuition here in California, but there was no DACA, there was no California Dream Act, there was not a lot of funding opportunities, not a lot of scholarships for fully undocumented folks or for undocumented folks. So I left Mexico and I came back in 2013. And because of that, I was not able to qualify. But I still graduated in 2020 with a master's degree in clinical counseling psychology. And after graduating, I was like, okay, now what? In California, you're able to become a licensed clinician as an undocumented individual. But in order to be a licensed individual and be able to set your own private practice or be an independent contractor, you have to accumulate 3,000 hours. And that is a challenge because one of the only things that you can do is volunteer. So I did volunteer about 2,000 hours out of those 3,000 hours to become a licensed clinician. And then I was like, okay, what can I do? I cannot continue to volunteer. So I need to do something. And I started having conversations with different people at Immigrants Rising, and they offered the opportunity, hey, we want to continue to expand the mental health programming at Immigrants Rising, and Liliana was a part of that at the time. And everybody helped me to navigate and to learn how to navigate this new world and get paid while I was volunteering and accumulating those 3,000 hours. So I learned so much. And at first I'm still having it's been 3 years since Undocumented Health started. It started as a for-profit business. And I have not announced this officially, but a couple of months ago, we became a nonprofit organization. And so now it's expanding in different ways that I never imagined that this was a possibility. And so do I know everything? No, I'm learning as I go. I'm getting more knowledge as I go. I'm continuously learning so much from different people. And at the same time, I'm proud of, hey, I just started because I wanted to survive. And look at us now, 3 years later, as a nonprofit organization. So, yeah, sorry, I expanded a little more than I wanted to. But long story short, as Rocio mentioned, is this all worth it? At times, it's gonna feel like it's not. And then as you keep pushing, you're gonna realize, wow, like I've gone so far. And yes, it is worth it.
Thank you all so much for sharing. There's so many questions that I have. So many things that I heard. And there's one thing that you all pointed out, and one of them is navigating the systems. Navigating the systems of oppression that are not designed for us in a country that doesn't want us. And yet again, I heard each and every one of you being able to voice and say, this is a place where I can come in and offer something, and I have something to offer. Imposter syndrome is real. The sense and feeling that you don't belong. Now, how did you navigate that process and that journey of navigating the system, the imposter syndrome, in being able to voice, this is what I'm able to offer in a particular system or institution that made you question whether you belong there? And we can start with Myra O'Brien.
I'm gonna keep it short. And for me, it was community. It's the community that continuously uplifts you, continuously tells you keep going, that continuously tell you your story was so inspirational, or like I was able to relate to your story. I was able to relate to you, or your words spoke to me, and they make me keep going. There's times when I myself don't want to keep going. I think I'm funny and I post things on social media. Sometimes they don't go well, or sometimes, you know, outsiders or people that don't want us continue to push us away. And in my case, they continue to push me away or be hateful towards me or towards what I'm sharing. But then there's thousands and thousands of other people that is like, hey, don't stop. Like, your story inspires, and please keep doing what you're doing, because for me, even if I impact one person in what I'm doing here, I fulfilled my goal. And so for me, I battle, or I fight against imposter syndrome by surrounding myself with that supportive community.
Thank you, Myra. Lily.
Yes, can certainly relate to a lot of what's been shared. Well, as a psychologist at UCSF, I'm constantly talking about the imposter syndrome, right? It's a very competitive institution with a lot of really intelligent people that come in, and for the first time, they're like, oh my God, I'm not number one, right? So we talk about that. And of course, there's also a lot of students that are first gen, and they're the first in their families, right, to enroll in a doctoral program in med school. So the ways that I talk about the imposter syndrome in my sessions with students and also in other BIPOC spaces is, first of all, let's understand the history of the imposter syndrome. The term was coined at a white university, actually testing the performance of white women. Right? So let's just begin by that, right? That's already a coined term that does not apply to BIPOC individuals, right? So we need to be able to kind of think about the system and the ways in which the system reinforces this internalized way of like thinking and being in the world. So I think even when we start to have those conversations about like, do you know where the imposter syndrome term comes from and who coined it and what it is? I think it's really transformative, right? For us to be able to kind of think about, that's part of the ways in which we are colonized, right? And so being, again, able to decolonize our thinking in that way really allows us to tap and connect to our strengths from a place of humility too, right? Where we can share that in a way where we can feel proud and happy about our accomplishments. So I always tell folks, you know, this degree, this like title of doctora, right, is just for me to infiltrate the system. That's the only reason. Right. And once we infiltrate the system, then we do like Robin Hood, right? We tap into those resources to connect it back to the community and not just create spaces for us, but really deconstruct these systems, knowing that they're inherently made with not our image or our language or our ways of thinking and being in the world in mind. So I think I constantly check in with myself about that, right? Like, am I exploring this from a place of humility and curiosity? Or is this like what like white supremacy colonial thinking taught me about, performance and accomplishments? So I think those are the ways that I challenge it. And those are the ways that I hope that as health professionals, we can continue to challenge that.
Yeah. Thank you for highlighting that. And even thinking about just also going back and relating to some of the things that Myra said as well, which is tapping into your strength. And like even Myra, for yourself, one of the things that you share, like tapping into your own story as a source of strength and tapping into your community as a source of strength. And I think that's huge as in this current world, and like you said, Liliana, having to infiltrate certain systems. Mara Jimenez.
I'm gonna keep it real because I keep it real. I think for me, honestly, it was a lot of buying into the system. I think a lot of how I survived my own feeling of I don't belong is by showing up extra hard, which has been damaging. So I'm undoing the damage now. But it was that I had to show up and do extra and be more and work like excessive amount of hours and feel like I was needed, right? Because that's what these systems told me to do to survive. So I did it. I think now that's part of what I'm unlearning, that I don't have to do that I am enough, that I have done enough, that I am valuable. But I think it takes time. And as people that are like entering a field or finishing a degree, like if that's where you're at, that's where you're at. I hope that you don't overdo it and kill yourself in the process, right? Like, but it's damaging being in a system that you're not belonged in and that you are told constantly that you're taking space. So you survive the way you need to. And that was the way I did. So I'm still learning. I'm learning that I don't have to do too much, but it's a process.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for sharing. And there's one thing that's coming to mind as you were sharing that, Myra, too, is that there's this concept or this idea, like at least I was told when I started college, that there was going to be a period of exploration. I could go in and explore, what are some of the things that I like? What are some of the things that I am like good at? And I remember thinking to myself, I do not have time to explore. I have this scholarship. I need to get out of here as soon as possible. I need to choose something real quick. And this is what I'm going to do because I am not trying to stay here beyond the scholarship that I've been given. And then there's this other side of doing for the sake of feeling needed and wanting to know that you're taking advantage of every single opportunity because there might be a lack of tomorrow, later down the line. And so and I bring this up because you've all have expressed and there's so much that you all have contributed to the world and the fields that you're in, that you've gotten to the point where it seems, and from what I see, you've been able to kind of narrow it down and know, this is what I'm offering to the world. This is what I'm choosing to offer to the world through my business. Can you share a little bit more about what was that journey and that process like of going from whether it was exploring or whether it was from a place of doing that got you to the place where you got to define what the scope of your business or your work was going to be? Share with us a little bit about kind of like what the process was like for you and honing it down. And we can go ahead and start with Myra Jimenez.
I think for me it was, so I think even though I know I can do things, sometimes I get really scared. So I think I always knew that I knew that therapy was my goal. And I love to do therapy. I love to be in community with people. I love to hold space. But I always knew that I wanted to serve the people where I come from. So I was like, undocumented people don't get services enough. Undocumented people struggle to find support. And I was like, and I think on top of that, there is value that comes with having that lived experience. So I knew I needed to do that. So I think it took just time to feel confident in my ability to do that on my own and like not be scared. But I think it's a vision that's continuing to grow, right? Like I think in my meeting people, in finding out things that continue to be gaps, like I want to be able to use the skills I have to continue to support the undocumented community. And one of those ways, eventually, the vision that I have is like fill that gap that Maida was talking about, like that there are people out there wanting to be therapists and they're wanting to provide support for other people, and there's things that are stopping them. And I think part of it is also like the system that's created, that it's like we have to suffer to make it somewhere, right? That even as a person that maybe like is like documented in the US, that has like all the skills, but it comes from a low income background, they teach you in grad school from the beginning, you're not going to make any money, right? And that's toxic and that's awful. And I think it's unfair because we're doing work and we need to be paid for the work. And that's what my goal is, to create a system that isn't just abusing and taking advantage of other people wanting to be professionals, but is creating a space that's fair. So I don't know how I'll get there, but I think that's my vision, and I imagine myself being able to do that at some point.
Thank you, Mara. We'll go ahead and go to Lily.
Yeah, I'm trying to process the question, and I think Myra, you mentioned a lot of really important things in terms of our development, right? As human beings, we never it's about maybe having an idea and having letting that idea marinate, right? And planting the seed, but also getting comfortable with the anxiety of like not knowing what's going to happen. So you know, I'm having a lot of flashbacks about like, you know, what some of the darkest moments I think in my academic and professional pursuits and personal, right, development, where I had a degree and I couldn't even get a waitressing job, right, because of E-Verify. And just how depressed I was and how anxious I was. And I had no idea, right, what I was going to do. Like, am I going to look for another nonprofit organization, right? I want to go to grad school. How do I get there? Right? All of these different questions, and you know, just mountains that you're like, I don't know how I'm going to get there. And I didn't have the answers. I didn't have the mentors. It's sad to say, but that was a reality. So I think it was about, you know, coming back to hope, and coming back to what I knew at that time, which was like, okay, I can go into a place and say, these are the skills that I have. How can I support, right? How can, you know, work together? After that, I ended up like babysitting for this, you know, family. And there's a whole story behind that, but the essence of, I think what I'm trying to say is that we don't know. And that also for me to sit here and say that right now, that's a huge privilege. And I'm able to say that because now I have documents, right? If I was undocumented at this point with this degree, I don't know what I would be saying, right? I don't know where I would be. So there is a certain level of privilege that comes with me sharing, like, hold on to uncertainty, right? When we're dying and being targeted, right? And continuously having to survive all of these exploitative and violent environments. So anyway, those are just some of the thoughts that I think are coming up for me.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. Thank you, and for just really acknowledging too, you know, the place from where what that answer would have been like had the situations been different versus now, and just really acknowledging that. Myra.
Yeah, thank you for highlighting that, Liliana. I became documented 3 months ago. And so I'm still processing that. I'm still like, how does the world look like? Because everything I've done is because there's this very specific path of whatever life throws at me, then that's the way I'm gonna go. If life gives me this other opportunity, that's where I'm gonna go. But with the years, there's this phrase from a song that says, I'm making it up. We're making it up as we go along. And that really resonates with me because whatever life throws at me, then, I'll make it up. The reason why Undocumented Health became a nonprofit, it's because somebody said like, hey, you know that you can become a nonprofit, right? This was during the process of me becoming documented, but Undocumented Health became a nonprofit with me being undocumented. So that's an accomplishment that I learned that anybody can do, and we can do so much, but we limit ourselves so much we're so used to whatever life throws at us, and then that's the way we go. We just adjust. It's a constant adjustment. And so I am learning, and I've been learning to embrace that. I'm just making it up as we go along. If I have the opportunity to become a nonprofit, cool. You asked the question, and I'm still defining it. There's so much that I want to do. I'm hoping that Undocumented Health becomes a mental health clinic that provides free and very low cost mental health services for the immigrant community. I am hoping that it also becomes just like the Immigrants Rising mental health career program. I had the opportunity to co-create it with Immigrants Rising. And so what it does is, as I mentioned previously, fully undocumented therapists can only accumulate those hours in California by volunteering. But then we found this statement by the Board of Behavioral Sciences that says that volunteers can get a stipend if they're a part of a program that specifically allows therapists to accumulate hours to work with underrepresented populations. So with that, I'm also hoping that Undocumented Health becomes a training clinic as well, in which fully undocumented therapists in California can continue to accumulate their hours to facilitate that licensure. I'm also hoping to expand this to other states because we know that Nevada and Illinois are two of the states that also allow fully undocumented individuals to become licensed therapists. And maybe find other states in what ways which type of immigrants are able to become licensed clinicians, because we need more of us. We need more of us in the world. We bring so much to the table, not just because of our productivity, but because of who we are, because where we come from, because we exist. And there's also another phrase that says, our existence is resistance. And I fully agree. And I think that I want us to thrive. I want our community to know that we're so much powerful than we think we are, and that we can do it.
Thank you, Myra. Thank you for sharing and for highlighting that. And again, there are so many things that I heard in this conversation, and like there's a couple of things, and like one of them is the need, and oftentimes as I hear, can become a challenge, which is of being authentic to yourself, being genuinely authentic. And that, as I see the three of you within the mental health field, there's something very unique that you each offer. Although the three of you are within the mental health field and care about the undocumented community. And there's one thing that's just really surfacing for me, and it's also one thing that Myra, you mentioned, which is that there is a need. There continues to be a need, and we need more. And really the acknowledgement that the three of you and more people are coming together for this need that oftentimes is bigger than one person. And it just brought me back to this one quote that says that there is enough for everyone's need and not for everybody's greed, by Mahatma Gandhi. And just really highlighting, and I bring this up because there were often times when, and I can speak for myself, where I thought about, well, there's a lot of people already doing that. Why would I step in? What role will I play? Or how would it be different? And so I want to point that out because there might be people who are probably wondering or thinking, well, what is something unique that I can bring in to a setting where I know that there's other people? And if you can maybe share, what is that one unique thing that you bring into a space, into an industry, into a role that that really highlights who you are as a person and how you contribute to this broader problem that we have. And we'll start off with Lily.
Yeah, I love that question. It's so powerful. I mean, I agree. I think everybody, right, has their unique talents and skills and wisdom. So I think when I hear that, right, I hear like a lot of like, and this, that we all experience this, right? Like white supremacist colonial thinking, right? That I have to be the best, that I have to come up with like the most original thing, right? When in fact, right, like our ancestors and our indigenous ancestors, right, like taught us that there's like room for all healers, that actually healing is passed down from generation to generation, from family to family, right? And that we all carry medicine within us, because medicine is sacred in that way. So there's that way of thinking, right, about our skills and our talents and ourselves, as it relates to our purpose in the world. Maslow's hierarchy of needs says like you have to reach this level of self-actualization, right? Well, we know that Maslow actually robbed that method, right, from an indigenous community where it's actually the opposite. You actually have to understand yourself in the context of community first before you even reach that point of self-actualization, because self-actualization is very individualistic, right? It's ways of thinking about oneself and what we, yes, bring to the table, but also what does the community, right, bring back to me, and how is that going to change me? So I think about it in that way. And I think it's constantly, right, being challenged, that thinking. I mean, at UCSF, right, like constantly, what innovative thing are you gonna like come up with, right? I also have a consulting group, and we work with a lot of universities in California to be able to integrate and strengthen their like diversity and equity and inclusion efforts. So in a lot of ways, it's like, what are you doing different, right, that other people are doing different? And it's not so much about that, but it's about like, well, for example, with the consulting group, right, that I'm with, it's not about the methodology that we're using that is, evidence-based or, what have you. It's about the relationship that we have as a consulting group and how that community and that relationship has really allowed us to be able to integrate our personal, our professional, and our research-based skills to be able to consult with these big universities and charge them the big bucks, because these are the institutions, right? Like, I have no shame in charging universities big bucks, right? I'm not going to do that to my community, but hell yeah, I'm going to do it to an institution. So I think those are the ways that I kind of think about like the work and how I can continue to decolonize my thinking around working with community. And also, again, thinking about like, how is this idea going to be nurtured by the community, right? I don't go out there and call myself a healer, right? People call other healers healers. Just like this degree is, it doesn't mean anything. It means something in white institutions, right? So I'm going to use that to leverage and have those conversations and yes, challenge white thinking. But it doesn't mean anything if it's not coming from a place of cultural humility.
Thank you, Lily. So much in there. And I do have some follow-up questions as we engage in the conversation. Thank you so much.
I'm fierce and I get in trouble at UCSF all the time because, as you can see, I'm very aggressive too.
So many things in there, and there's something that came up in a previous group, which was, there's something that's really unique into how you tap into who you are and how you want to show up in different spaces and create essentially, and thinking in terms of that terms that are like utilizing to like brand yourself that is really unique to who you are and make a stamp and make a statement in terms of like who you are in the spaces that you walk into or that you're in. And so there's just so much there that you share, and I'm gonna be coming back with some questions too. Myra Barragan.
Yes, as you all can see, each one of us offers something very unique, something very different that sometimes is hard to say with words. Sometimes as you see us, as you listen to us, those are the things that you notice, like, okay, that's the uniqueness. Can I put it in one word? I don't know. For me, if I can just put it in one word, it would be pettiness. That's what's unique about me. I'm petty. And if somebody tells me you can't do that, I'll be like, watch me. And a lot of things that I've accomplished has been because of that. Because, okay, you don't think I can do it? Okay, watch me do it. So that is what I bring to the table. That is my uniqueness. What about you, Mayra Jimenez?
Thanks, Maida. I think for me, it's funny because like Maida and I have the same name, right? So what I think I bring to the table is that I'm authentic, right? Even though there's somebody here that has my name. But I think it's like I want to say that like going back to what Liliana was sharing before about like it comes from a place of privilege. I recognize that I've been able to do a lot of internal work with myself to feel like I can show up in places authentically, but that has taken time, right? Because showing up authentically means a lot of people don't like me, which is cool. Like, I'm like I have enough confidence in my capacity and who I am and what I bring that I know I can do that. But that also comes with this other thing of like, I know that right now as a formerly undocumented person, that also comes with privilege. Because if I were doing this, I was pretty authentic before, but there was always that fear, right? How far can I take it before they fire me and I lose the stable job that I have? That's changed because of that. But I think more than anything, my ability to have done work to love myself and know what I bring, that has allowed me to show up authentically in spaces and be like I know I'm doing it gently, so if you don't like it, it's cool. Like, but I don't need to conform to what other people's idea or perception of who I needs to be anymore.
Thank you, Myra. And there's a lot of confidence that you all project as you're speaking about who you are and really owning who you are, even in this space. And so how are you able to get to that place of confidence where you're able to speak to, yes, this is who I am, this is how I'm showing up, and this is what I bring to the table. What's some advice that you can give to folks who are still trying to build that level of confidence to show up as their most authentic selves in different settings and in different spaces? And we can start with Mayra Barragan.
I love these questions. I think it's hard to just put it with one word or step by step. But I can share that for me, there are different things. I still feel fear. I still get very anxious when I'm doing a presentation, when I'm navigating certain spaces, when I'm navigating certain environments, when I'm sharing a space with certain people. I still feel fear. So I don't think confidence is the lack of fear. Confidence for me is to be able to do something and carrying that fear. So I still carry that fear because I'm very much human. All feelings are a part of being human. And so I give myself a lot of grace. I have done a lot of inner work. I have my own therapist. I've been working with her for a few years. I rely on myself and my community. I am moving away from that. I have to be a strong, independent person, that I can do everything by myself. No, I rely a lot on my community. I've rewired my thinking patterns. I used to think that, I am a burden, I am not enough, unless I accomplish this, then I'm gonna be somebody. And he's like, I'm already somebody. And it's a lot of self-work that I've been doing in order to be confident. And it's a lot of practice, a lot of inner work. It's not just confidence. Again, it's not, I may appear confident right now. It's that, and as I'm sharing this, I'm stumbling on my words. And in my head, I have two choices. I can think of myself, oh, well, you're so stupid. Like, you can't even think of your words. What's wrong with you? Or I can give myself that grace that I deserve. Hey, sometimes as you're processing what you want to say, sometimes you stumble in your words, and that's okay. That doesn't mean that you're stupid. It doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean that you're lacking something. It just means that you're human.
Mm-hmm.
Continue on. So those are some of the things that I've found helpful in my journey.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mayra. Thank you. Mayra Jimenez.
I think for me, like what I think about, especially for some of you that are developing and like maybe don't feel that confidence yet, I think it's like find the people that feel safe for you, because I think that being able to have someone or a place to go where you can tell somebody your fears, like Mara said, like I just did this and I sucked, or I messed up, or I didn't know how to do this. I think you need to be able to know what you can't do to know what you can do. So finding safe spaces or people that can guide you through that, because eventually you will be able to do that and tell anybody, right? Like, I just did this presentation, it sucked kind of, but it's all right, like we did it, right? Or like whatever. But I think before you get there, you need smaller spaces that can hold you and can feel safe and can guide you through, this can be better next time, right? Because I think that helps with the humility part and also building the confidence. And I think the other thing too is that it's not going to be easy. I think for me to get where I'm at today, I had to break, like really break to places that I was like, I didn't think I could get there, right? But I did, and then I made it out of that. So I think knowing that too, that it's not going to be easy and it's going to be painful.
Thank you, Mayra. Lily.
Yeah, definitely taking in everything that's been said, and deeply thinking about like what is confidence for me and how does it manifest for me, like personally and professionally. And I really don't know. I really don't know what that means. I think I often navigate this internal challenge between um am I drinking the Kool-Aid, right? To like not get criticized because it's a system, right? That I have to survive. Or I'm gonna get hood because I grew up in the hood. And then people are gonna be like, no, you don't belong here, right? You don't know what you're talking about. So it's constantly about navigating that and finding that sweet spot of authenticity, right? And yes, about the spaces and the people. I've learned that these academic spaces are never going to be spaces where I'm going to feel my whole self. Can I be nerdy? Yeah, I'm going to tap into that nerdiness, right? Into that scientific lens or what have you. But I'm not going to be my whole self because it wasn't created with me in mind. But can there be moments where I can feel authentic and that I think authenticity, I resonate with the word authenticity more than confidence, I think. I struggle with the word confidence. But in spaces or moments of authenticity, I know that I feel connected to my spirit, connected to my heart, connected to my mind. And there's a quote by Tupac that says, speak your truth, even if your voice shakes, right? So every time my voice shakes in these spaces, I'm like, I'm speaking my truth. I'm gonna just like connect to that, that shake, that somatic response that is coming up for me that says, yes, you are alive and you are here.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing. And there's certain things that surfaced and that came up as you were all speaking. And one of them is, and I want to bring it back to, there's that personal, sometimes sense or feeling of isolation, of doing it alone, going through this process alone, and um, how in settings when you're not able to be your most authentic self can itself lead to a sense and a feeling of isolation. And as you've been navigating this entrepreneurial journey, and this is something that was also a theme and from like other panelists and things that came up, is sometimes we get to glorify this idea of entrepreneurship, which can lead or have different experiences for everyone and can sometimes feel isolating as you're embarking on this journey and with this business. How have you been able to navigate that process and that journey of entrepreneurship as you try to maintain community? Or have you experienced that sense or that feeling of isolation throughout your process of going through your entrepreneurial journey? And how have you overcome some of those feelings or connected with other people? And we can have Lily share.
Let's share very quickly because I think this is something that I struggle with deeply. And that I think also in the context of like healing and health professions, a lot of the times we're expected to like not be expensive, right? Be cheap or be free, because it's a helping profession. So there's that layer of that, right? Within healing careers. But I think I'm now at a point where I've compartmentalized. It's not integrated whatsoever. And the compartmentalization for me is not where I want to be, but that's just where I'm at right now. So I've compartmentalized that I'm going to make some profit off of the universities, right? Like I'm going to contract with them. I'm going to give them, that invoice. And I'm going to try to do, social justice, activism work, right? I don't know. And I said at the beginning, I have a really hard time with the word profit. I don't know how I can do that. Yeah. With, with like my community. And I don't know that maybe that's where I'm gonna go. Maybe I'm just gonna stick right with these big institutions. And that's the way that I'm making sense of it now. And I've compartmentalized. And it also doesn't mean, right, that either or is right or wrong. Just in my own decolonial process, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Lily. And there's this level and need for sustainability. And I think it goes back to some of the points that Myra mentioned in the development of our mental health career program, which is a need that Myra was able to voice, which is this need that people need to not just survive, but be able to thrive. And there has to be ways in which things can be sustainable for people to be able to achieve. And you're really highlighting how that, it's not just a matter of in trying to pursue a career or obtain a degree, but it's a continuous thing, even as you're going through that journey. Mara Jimenez.
I think for me, it's similar to what Liliana said. I struggle because I think even in thinking about developing and becoming my own person, my own business person, I did it on my own when I didn't have to, right? Like there's so many people out there that I know that have a private practice, that are doing business, that I could have sought help for, but I didn't. So I think it's that continued thinking of like, I don't have to do it alone. Like I can ask for help. But it's hard. I think it's hard as somebody that like, is formerly undocumented, and you hid a lot of things of yourself to survive in the systems, and like you just figured it out. So it's hard to let go of that. So I think, yeah, it's a work in progress.
Yeah, thank you, Myra. They will go with Mayra Balagan.
Yeah, I connect to both. There's so many layers in this. Like we, as a community, again, we want to go beyond that survival mode. We want to thrive. But then in this capitalistic society, we also need to earn some income in order to survive. At least from what I hear, and I'm sure that I also want to work with the immigrant community. That's where it's at. That's my passion. That's where I feel that I have a purpose in life as a therapist, as a person, as a community member. And then there's that layer of, I know that a lot of the community that want to seek my services as individuals, they don't have the resources available to seek my services. And if I want to do it for free, then I can't survive. I'm putting myself in that survival mode, and it's not helpful for my client or the people that I want to work with, or for myself. So at this moment, like Liliana, working with bigger organizations and universities, and they pay for my services, so I'm able to give back to individuals. So that's where I'm finding my balance. That's where I'm finding where it feels right for me. And in regards to that isolation as an entrepreneur, I have the privilege of not feeling lonely because I've let go of that idea of I'm a burden or I'm bothering people. So a lot of the things that I've done, it's because other people have guided me in this process. And I also learned that there's other organizations that have the funding to teach you that entrepreneurial world. So I've connected with so many other nonprofit organizations whose goal is to help other small businesses, and they've done it for free. So I've received a lot of that help for free, and those are some of the reasons how I've been fighting that isolating journey of being an entrepreneur. And the last thing is, I realized that I'm not going to be the traditional entrepreneur. As Lilina has mentioned, we have this idea of who an entrepreneur is, typically older white male in the society, dressed in a suit and tie, and is like unreachable. So I reframe that as I am also an entrepreneur, and I do not look like that, and I do not have to look like that, because I'm not serving the people that they are serving. We're two different people. This is my journey, and I'm embracing those new labels that I choose to embrace because they fit with me.
Thank you, folks. And I do want to invite our audience to share and sending questions that you might have. You can add them through the Q&A format. If it feels easier to include them in the chat, you're welcome to add them in the chat as well. So feel free. We're gonna be welcoming your questions so that they can answer, the panelists can answer your questions as well. Okay. And I am going to, there is one question that came in. And so the question that we have is about the imposter syndrome. What motivated or motivates you guys to get out of that feeling, especially when you don't see much of an opportunity for people like us with lack of immigration status? So in the place where you're feeling in that state of lack of motivation, how do you get yourself out of that state when you don't see as many opportunities for folks with lack of immigration status? And I can, whoever would like to answer the question can answer first.
I can go. I think because what I think about that is I don't think there's really a motivation other than survival, like particularly when you don't know what that future is gonna look like. I think it was talked a lot of by different people and by different panelists today, like is like being comfortable with the not knowing. And I don't think it's even comfort, it's just like you don't know and you're still gonna do it, right? Because the alternative to that would be to just give up, right? Which we can also because it's fair. But when I didn't want to just give up, I had to just do it blindly, not knowing, like being like, you know what, this is the one step I can take. I don't know what step number 2 is gonna look like, and I'll figure it out when I get there, right? I think going into grad school, that's exactly what I went in with. It was also before DACA, and I was like, I don't know what this is gonna look like. I even took steps to talk to the people that were like that were directing the program, and I was like, hey, this is my situation, what can you do? And their feedback to me as white men was, we don't really know, this has never happened, so you're welcome to come, right? So it's like, okay. Like, so when I got in, I said, well, I'm gonna do it because the alternative would be to not do it, and I don't want that. And that's really, really hard to hold.
If I may add to that, give yourself a lot of grace. And if you're feeling defeated, if you're feeling sad, if you're feeling frustrated, if you're feeling angry, acknowledge those feelings and say, it's okay for me to feel all of this. Like navigating these systems is so difficult that I would be surprised if people are navigating, if we're navigating these systems and constantly being happy and motivated and energized. Sometimes that's not possible, and that's okay. Acknowledging that it is normal and it is completely valid to feel the way that you're feeling, and taking breaks doesn't mean that you failed. Just life was putting you in, or you chose to take a different route. When I self-reported in 2010, at the time I felt like a failure because I was feeling so hopeless. I was feeling all of these things. And thinking back at it, I don't think everything happens for a reason. I will never share that statement. That was a shitty reason, and I left. But here's the thing. I was not a failure then, and I'm not a failure now. It's just a different path that I needed to take to be where I'm at right now. So if something is not going right in your life and you're feeling demotivated, it's okay. If you need to take a break, if you need to just feel your feelings and cry it out, or punch a pillow, or talk it out, do that. And then when you feel ready, then keep going. But please know that not being motivated doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It's just a human reaction to something difficult that you're going through.
Thank you, Myra. And Myra. Lily, is there anything that you would like to add?
Just like not basic at all, but I just don't even subscribe to the imposter syndrome anymore. Like, it's just not a term that I like, you know, like place my value in. I think about situations and moments where I'm experiencing hardship, like as a place of like self-compassion and a place of humility. Like, am I feeling anxious or insecure because I don't know this, right? And where does that pressure come from? But I've just completely kind of stopped using the label imposter syndrome to describe like when I feel like I don't belong. So that's been one way that I think I challenge myself to do that. That has really allowed me to tap more into like hope and motivation.
Yeah. Thank you. And really the kind of like there's this different layers of, there's a level of self-talk that you know, you try to like pump yourself up, you know, you give yourself a little pep talk, you know. And then there's this other layer that you were mentioning, Liliana, which is, well, what kind of words are you using when you're giving yourself that pep talk, where you're not feeding into the root of the problem, you know? So very insightful, and I love that question. Thank you so much to our audience for sending in that question, and you know, just really giving us an opportunity to expand on something that is so common amongst folks and members of our community, especially the undocumented community, who are in a new place, who have, you know, tried to adapt into a new place in a new setting. There is one question that I do have, and this is a question that I want to ask because there's a couple of things that has been shared. You know, the sense of self-worth, the sense of bringing in and having a value that you're sharing out with the community, having to thrive in sustainability, and making sure that what you're doing is sustainable for yourself, and that it's giving you some livelihood. Now, most people do not like to talk about money. And my question to you all is, how has your relationship to money changed from when you first started your entrepreneurial journey to now? And whoever would like to go first can go first.
I'll share an example very quickly, and I shared this yesterday in the career communities group, which was when I first started doing independent contracting. I would get on the phone, right? Like, yes. And it was like a consulting hour or two that I was like checking in with someone. Free time, right? Like, yeah, sure, why not? I will pick. They would pick my brain, right? But really, I was giving them free labor and free knowledge, right? Again, we can talk about the capitalistic ways of thinking about knowledge and who owns that and all that stuff, right? All of that is part of our reality. And I think as I later realized and also experienced exploitation from nonprofit organizations, right, who were not paying me what I deserved. I think that was a painful experience, I think, to also acknowledge that even within the immigrant nonprofit world, like that can happen, and it is an experience. And to also just continue to advocate for yourself. And so again, right, kind of think about like, what is the relationship that you want to have with this company? What is the relationship that you want to have with this person or this nonprofit organization? And go from there and think about like, well, what is your time worth, right? And not be afraid to have that be the first conversation that you have. I think it's okay to like talk about like, okay, yes, I want to work with you, and let's talk about how I'm going to be compensated. So I think it's still very uncomfortable for me. It challenges me all the time, right? And when I'm able to have those conversations at the beginning, I feel like I am able to move through my work in a more empowering way.
Yeah, thank you, Lily. Mara Barragan or Jimenez, if you would like to go. Barragan.
I'm just saying this to Liliana because I'm still navigating that. I'm still, in here, typically at the beginning, or at least for me at the beginning, it was just like, oh, we're offering you this much for this speaking engagement, or we're offering you this much for this consulting business thing. And I'll be like, okay, yeah, thank you. And then I realized that I had the right to set my fees. I had the right to negotiate. But again, because I've always followed this path, or you have this scholarship, you have this thing, you have to take these classes, you have to live here, you have to choose this partner, like everything felt like whatever life was throwing at me. And so up to today, I'm still having a little bit of a hard time saying like, no, I'm not doing that speaking engagement for that much, because I know your budget and I know that you can provide more and I deserve more. And so I'm still navigating that. I'm still navigating that new relationship with myself and money and other organizations that are paying me for the services that I provide. I'm still trying to ask that very good question. How do I want this relationship to look like? And not just depending on the money. If they pay me this much, then I'll do it. No. What is the relationship? What feels good for me? And I'm still trying to navigate that. But it's been helpful because the more that you do it, the more true to yourself you become, and the more that this is my worth, regardless of what anybody thinks. This is my worth, and I'm gonna go for that, and I'm not gonna take less than that.
Thank you, Myra.
I think for me, it's a little bit different just because I think I'm still battling the needing something safe and consistent, right? I think my thinking now has been, I want to eventually be full-time in my own company. And I think that's been really difficult for me because having a stable paycheck, somebody that gives you money every 2 weeks, no matter what you do or you don't do, right? Like that's safe. And I think that's been very difficult for me to know that taking this leap is going to mean that it's not going to be consistent. It's not going to be safe. So how am I going to do what Liliana and Myra said? Like, how am I going to give myself that value and make sure that I'm getting paid what I deserve and where, right? Because the where is very important to me. So I think it's a work in progress. A lot of what I said today is a work in progress because it's just, I don't know what it's going to look like, but there's still that fear of letting go of what feels safe.
And it's great because there's a couple of things that I heard within the things that folks were sharing, which is there's this level of being able to advocate and really claim what it is that you need in a working relationship to be able to maintain those relationships, those working relationships in a way that feels meaningful both to you and the person that is accessing your services, while also sitting with the certainty that sometimes entrepreneurship has and can have on someone who's starting this journey and is just getting started. And this is actually a really great transition to one of our questions that we have, which is, do you have any tips on starting your own business?
I don't know if tips, but I have 3 resources. One of them is TheDream.Us, has a series of videos on YouTube with so many entrepreneurs from IT to different sectors and different careers and how they started, different panelists such as this one, and other workshops that are recorded that are on YouTube that I've watched myself. There's so much information with so many other entrepreneurs in the immigrant community sharing different links, starting from finding out what type of career would be good for you depending on your personality, to these are the different options that you have in your state. There's so much information in that YouTube channel. Immigrants Rising also has a series of different workshops on similar topics. Immigrants Rising has the spark.immigrantsrising.org, which is a hub where there's so much information regarding entrepreneurship, and also contact your local nonprofit organizations that focus on entrepreneurship. Again, that's what I did. I live in the Inland Empire in California, San Bernardino. And so I connected with the Inland Empire Women Business Center. They had free one-on-one consultations, and they told me, okay, what do you want to do? I give them the idea of what I wanted to do, and they're like, okay, here's step 1, step 2, step 3, let's do it together. Let's walk through all the steps together. So it was very smooth for me. Again, just getting all that information beforehand and then going to that one-on-one consultation so that they can walk me through the process. So those are the few tips and resources that I think you're gonna love and that are gonna be of a lot of help when starting your business.
Thank you. Thank you for reiterating that you don't have to do this alone. And there's people out there willing to support through the journey. I think Liliana, I saw you unmute yourself.
Did I? I'm sorry. Just wanted to add, just tap into your inner child and play, visualize, dream. I think, I'm thinking of just childhood experiences, right? Where you figure out how to sell something. So I think being able to tap into those dreams, as cliche and cheesy as it sounds, I think, also draws us into also thinking about what we enjoy, what we could enjoy, and our purpose.
Thank you, Liliana. Myra?
To say, I don't recommend this, but if you are going to do it alone, just read. That's what I did. I read a lot. I went on different websites, found different info. If I didn't understand something, I read that. So, just search, but I don't recommend that because I did that and it was too much. It could have been easier.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing. And there's so many different takeaways that I take from this conversation. And I do want to give our participants to be able to share what are some of your key takeaways from this conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that you all can have access to a mentee. This mentee will give you a access so that you can share. What is one word takeaway that you take away from this this panel session? We are going to be saving these responses, and we would love to hear from you. Again, I'm going to go ahead and share the QR code as well so that you can access and share what are your thoughts and what is a one-word takeaway from this session. I do want to have one final question to our panelist. And that is, what has your business gifted you?
I will go very quickly just because it was so easy for me to kind of think about this, and I want to share. My two co-consultants, you might know who they are, Laura Pinero and Germán Cadenas, badass psychologists, researchers in the undocumented health world. And their friendship and just like our continued collective work, like I just learned from them, and there are people that just inspire me. So that's really what this business has given me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lily. And we can have Mayra Barragan.
For me, it's community. Again, I'm always gonna go back to that community. Growing up, I was a very lonely teenager, coming here to the US at the age of 14, not knowing the language, not knowing anything, and navigating a new world on my own. I always felt very lonely. And so now I have a lot of people that I can lean on. And so for me, it's been that, knowing that I'm not alone, knowing that I built lifelong friendships and connections that I know that I'm always gonna have somebody there for me. So that's it for me.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mayra. And Mayra Jimenez.
I think for me it's purpose. I think I go into my business with purpose. So it definitely has given me that.
Purpose. Beautiful. Beautiful. I want to thank you all so much for your time. There's so much that I'm taking away with me throughout this panel session. And one of them is tap into your most authentic self as a roadmap to being able to discover what are some of the things that you're passionate about, that you're good at, and that you're able to speak and sell with confidence when you're out in the world talking to people and negotiating. And I want to again thank you all so much. Thank you to our panelists, and thank you to all of you who joined today's session. And we're super excited. There will be another Meet the Immigrant Entrepreneurs on Friday. And we're super excited, and we look forward to having folks there. Thank you all so much for being here, and have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.